Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of Survival Tips for Parents Raising Anxious Kids. My name is Natasha Daniels, and this is a collaboration between myself and the Made of Millions Foundation. I am a child therapist, and I help parents who are raising kids with anxiety or OCD. And I'm also the mom to 3 kids with anxiety and OCD, so I get it on a very personal level. And today I want to talk to you about helping our kids walk towards fear. It is very counterintuitive. In fact, most of the time, parentally, our job is to protect our kids. Our job is to help them work through things. And if we see our child fall, we run over there, we make sure they have a Band-Aid, and we might say, oh my gosh, you need to wear knee pads, we need helmets so that you never get hurt again. And when we are dealing with anxiety, it's counterintuitive because when we do that, when we overprotect them, when we swoop in and we cocoon them, we are doing them a disservice, because in order to work through anxiety, you have to not avoid it, and we have to learn how to handle that discomfort. And so if parentally we are always rescuing our kids, even though it seems like the right thing to do in the moment, we're not teaching them resilience, and we're not teaching them how to use their coping mechanisms that hopefully we're building. So today I want to talk to you about parenting a little bit more with intention when we're raising anxious kids, and where we're planning on going. So it doesn't mean that we, let go of the reins and now our child is just going to crumble. We don't want to do that. But we also want to know, where are we headed? Are we, plotting and planning, having them develop some skills to move through their anxiety? Or are we plotting and planning and masterminding every possible way to not have our child triggered? It seems like it feels good to make sure that our children are not triggered. It feels good to not see them suffer. It feels good to not have them go through a panic attack or just panic in general. It feels good to just see our kids happy. But for many of us who have kids with anxiety or an anxiety disorder, we realize that that's not helping them long term. And so part of being a superhero through anxiety is learning how to get through it and not around it. So we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing to bubble our children? What are we doing to soften the blow, soften the fall, so that they don't feel that thump when they hit the floor? The problem is, if we make sure that they don't feel that thump, then when they are, a young adult, or they are a teenager and they don't listen to you anymore, or they're 40 and they've had a long life, what's going to happen when they hit that first bump? Are they going to be like, what was that? And their car is going to be totally derailed, and they're going to go driving right off the road because nobody ever told them that there are bumps on the road, or nobody ever told them how to navigate over a bump. Hold your steering wheel tight because you're about to hit a bump, but it's okay because once the bump is over, it'll get smooth again. If we don't allow our children to feel those bumps and to hold the wheel, and that means that we're not holding it for them, they're not going to know how to get over a bump without being completely derailed. So I hope that makes sense. So hopefully you're with me on that one. And now we have to talk about, okay, fine, Natasha, I get it. Let's let our kids feel some bumps. Let's let our kids walk towards fear instead of away from fear. But how do I do that? What should I do? Where do I even start? That's a good question. And we're going to tackle that today. So we have to be careful with what we're conveying to our children. I teach kids in my therapy practice, and I teach my own kids this as well, that when we have anxiety, we have an overprotective lifeguard, and it is hitting the emergency alarm bell in our brain all the time. And it's not very good at its job because it's over anxious and overprotective. And so our job is to train our lifeguard. Our job is to let our lifeguard know, thanks, but no thanks. Didn't need that false alarm. We're just going to sleep. Or we're just going to school. Or I'm just going to a party. Calm it down. But also, parentally, we have to ask ourselves, are we high-fiving our child's anxiety? Are we confirming to our child's anxiety that it was a great call? Good job, you hit that false alarm because, they're going to bed. There's all sorts of danger in that. Or yeah, they're going to that party, they're going to that school. Scary times. And so when we inadvertently swoop in and rescue our children, we are also inadvertently letting their anxiety know that it did a good job. And we're conveying to our child's brain that those false alarms are important, they're crucial, and we're going to react accordingly. We're not trying to do that. None of us want to convey that anxiety is correct. That's not our goal. And that's why I'm talking about intention, because there's a lot of talk about intention, intentional parenting. I'm not talking about that in that ilk. I'm talking about having intention on helping our children through anxiety. And when we want to intentionally convey to our child that they are safe, that we are their anchor, and that they are having a false alarm, our actions will definitely speak louder than our words. So that doesn't mean that we drop the ball and we let them suffer and we say, hey, this is just your anxiety. Suck it up, buttercup. This is just your anxiety. That's not nice. But what it does mean is that we take the time to explain anxiety to our children. I have spent a lot of time talking to people about the importance of explaining anxiety to children. We don't want to just jump in and talk about not giving in to your anxiety or doing hard things anyway. That's like throwing a baby into the pool and saying swim without giving them swim lessons. We have to teach them. And the very, very first step of teaching a child how to crush their anxiety is what anxiety is and how it operates. And so it is really important to get books on anxiety that are age appropriate, watch kid YouTube channels. I have one to support children and have them watch videos that are designed for them on what anxiety is and how anxiety lies to them. That's a really good place to start. And then once your child knows, hey, here's the deal. This is how I talk to my kids and the kids in my practice. Your lifeguard, either we need to reboot him. I use two different analogies. I talk about rebooting the lifeguard. We need to get version 2.0 in there. Or depending on the child's personality, I talk about crushing the lifeguard. It just depends on your kid. And so are we going to reboot your lifeguard and get version 2.0, right? We'll just go with that analogy for now. So if we are upgrading, right, then when your 1.0 version pops up, we don't want to listen to it. We want to work through it so that we can upgrade. We want to upload. We want to support the new model, right? And when our kids understand that, at least intellectually, and you can even talk to very, very young kids with these analogies. I talk about Mr. Worry or Worry Cloud with kids who are 4 or 5 or 6 years old, and it gets a little bit more sophisticated as they get older. They understand that intellectually, right? So I say to kids, your Mr. Worry wants to grow bigger. And so when we feed your worry with all sorts of avoidance and high fives, it will grow bigger. Or you can use the lifeguard analogy. When we listen to version 1.0 and we react to that false alarm, we're telling your lifeguard, good job, lifeguard, you're so good. I love when you're wrong. I love when you hit that emergency bell and make me feel really panicky for no reason. It's so good, right? So our kids have to get that first. And you don't want to mush all of these analogies together. Just find one, be succinct, and use that one throughout how you talk to your child. And then once your child understands that when it's anxiety, it does feel real. Physiologically, it is real, and I have lots of kids' YouTube videos on that. And it's not in their head, it is in their body. I like to validate that for kids and let them know, yes, your stomach does hurt. Yes, you really are nauseous. You're not making that up. Sometimes when we say to kids, it's just your anxiety, they think that we're calling them a liar, or they think that we don't understand that they're physically feeling these things. So it is super important in your discussion about anxiety that you make sure to validate that, yes, what you're feeling is real. It's not a medical emergency, but it does not feel good because, chemicals are pumping through your body and it's not a good feeling, right? So then once they understand that, we want them to understand that we play a part in growing their lifeguard 1.0 or their worry cloud, whatever you're going to call it. We'll just call it Mr. Worry for the rest of this video to make it simple. So then when your child is having anxiety, you start to personify it and you say, Mr. Worry wants me to come with you. Mr. Worry wants me to sit with you at the shower. What can we do to, make Mr. Worry smaller? And you want to partner with your child. Now, a lot of times kids are not going to want to partner with you. They're going to want to partner with their anxiety. And so you have to make it motivating for a child to want to partner with you. So I do like to gamify it. Because when you talk to kids and you just say, you don't want to grow your lifeguard, you're going to live a life of anxiety, that's not fun. And if you're anxious and you're bringing all that anxious energy to the situation, or you don't get anxiety, so you're bringing some frustration to the situation, it doesn't help. And most kids are really not motivated by the doom and gloom stories of this is what it's going to look like if you don't work on it. I do share that with some kids, especially who are not motivated in my practice, just to add a little bit of oomph. But I have found that that doesn't really move the needle nearly as much as when I offer reinforcers and prizes and brave points and celebrations. So I do feel like the positive aspect of celebrating kids' steps towards difficulty is much more well received than doom and gloom or punitive. I mean, obviously that goes without saying, but punishment is not going to work for anxiety because anxiety will always trump the fear of your punishment. So you want to set up some sort of behavior modification system. So the first is education, really getting them on board. And the second is, I know that facing, Mr. Worry is tough. I know that he's super convincing and it doesn't feel good when you're feeling panicky. And we want to work on how can you face your fears. There is another step in here that I'm not going to go over in this video, but it is a really crucial step, and that is changing their thoughts. When we change our thoughts, we change our physical sensations, and when we're not feeling as anxious, we are less likely to avoid. And so normally when I'm working with kids or parents online on my website or in my groups, I always say we start with education, and then we start with motivation, and then we move into thoughts. So I talk a lot about red thoughts and green thoughts. We're not going to go into that here, but we want to have different thinking. We want to reframe their thoughts so that when they are panicky, they're able to combat those thoughts with what I call green thoughts. And that is for a different topic, a different time. But this is all about how do we get our kids to move into facing their fears. So hopefully, if your child has an anxiety disorder, they're seeing an anxiety therapist and they're getting cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, because really that's the gold standard of treatment. And that is the most effective approach to beating anxiety. We want to help our children reframe their thinking. And that is a key part in having them walk through their fears is what are they telling themselves? Are they saying, I'm going to die, but I'm doing this because I want to get, an Xbox gift card, or I'm going to die, but I'm doing this for Roblox or for an LOL doll or whatever. We want our kids to be telling themselves, I got this. You know what? There are no bad guys in my closet, or I got this. Even if I throw up at school, there's the nurse, and my friends will be my friends because they love me, and if they don't like me, then I don't want to be friends with them anyway. We need those reframing thoughts in order for them to be successful. So that's important, and maybe we'll do a future episode purely on that because that's a good topic. But then moving forward, we want to say, how can we set up some motivators? How can we set up what I call challenges? And challenges, clinically, they're called exposures, where we expose a child to discomfort, something that triggers their anxiety, and then we let them learn how to sit with their discomfort. And we don't do that in big steps. We can do that in baby steps. And so if I have a child who is afraid to go to sleep at night, maybe we're going to definitely work on their thoughts, right? And we're going to talk about how their worry cloud or their Mr. Worry or their lifeguard is panicking, and we need to communicate to their worry that they're having a false alarm. Whatever analogy you're going to use, right? We don't want to grow Mr. Worry. Mr. Worry loves to come out at night. That's one of his favorite times. And so we have to tell him, we are safe in this house. We have to tell him, there's nobody in my closet. We have to tell him all these things. Even though he's making your heart beat fast and making you feel clammy, we have to tell him these things. And now you can't do it parentally, right? So I'm showing you all the things that the child should be saying, but you shouldn't be saying that to the child. Over time, we want our children to say this to themselves. And then we want them to start to be brave, maybe get up and check their closet as long as they don't have OCD. I don't like checking behavior for kids who have OCD. Or maybe they're going to look under the bed and maybe they're going to tell themselves, I am safe in this house. I am having a false alarm. My Mr. Worry is trying to get fed, whatever it is for them. And then we want to set up challenges. So maybe the first challenge would be that I sit in their door frame. Maybe I have been sleeping with them. And so the first step would be for me to sit in their door frame and say, I'm going to sit here. I'm not going to be on your bed because that's feeding your Mr. Worry, but I'll sit here and that'll be our first step. Sometimes with kids, I don't tell them that's going to be our first step because their anxiety is like, first step? What's going to be the fifth step? I can't handle this. So we don't want to overwhelm them. But we do want them to have a general idea that we are moving in the right direction, that we're taking baby steps towards big goals, right? I don't always spell out the big goal. You're going to sleep by yourself and, you're not going to bother us. I'm not going to spell out the big goal. Or you're going to go to school every single day. And that can be overwhelming. But you just take it one step at a time. We're going to get you to where you feel comfortable. We're going to get you so you can sleep and feel good and not feel anxious at night. We're going to get you to school so you don't have to feel so overwhelmed. And then you just inchworm your way. So you're in the door frame, and then maybe, after a little while, it'll be different for each kid. Then maybe you're outside of the door frame where they can't see you. And then maybe you're at the couch, right? Or with school, maybe if they can't go to school at all, you're in the parking lot. And then maybe you're just doing the first hour. Or maybe you're doing 3 hours. It will obviously look different for each kid depending on their situation and the acuity of their anxiety. But the purpose of this lesson in this episode is to teach you that you should be moving in that direction. Because when you're not moving in that direction, then anxiety is getting stagnant and anxiety is growing. Now, there is a caveat to that because you're not the one driving the car. So you can't move faster than your child wants to move. That could be super frustrating, and that's a whole other episode in and of itself. How do we motivate kids so that they will want to drive their car and face their anxiety? We can't do that for them. However, we do a lot of stuff unintentionally to accommodate our children's anxiety. And so that's the part I'm speaking about today, is how often do we, orchestrate something in a way that won't trigger our children's anxiety? How often does our own anxiety come into play where we're doing things to protect our kids before they even had an opportunity to get anxious? I am so guilty of that. I have a choking thing. I have had an anxiety disorder since I was probably coming out of the womb, and I've worked very hard on it. And so, my lifeguard is version 2.0, maybe like 3.0, but version 1.0 is still playing in the background, and it will be for all of our kids. And so we have to be cognizant of our own issues and also be aware that our children are going to have version 1.0 playing in the background. And sometimes that version is going to get loud and overpower version 2.0, and that's okay. So yeah, I was cutting my children's food like way too long. And that's because I had a choking fear. And it's something that I've battled with, where I'm afraid of choking. I'm afraid of my kids choking. Choking's a theme for me. And so food, people choke on that. And so I was just cutting my children's food up way too long. And so I wasn't allowing them to grow and foster independence. And maybe I was even creating some panic for them through my own anxiety. Now, that doesn't always happen. A lot of parents don't have an anxiety disorder, but you want to be aware of what are you not allowing your child to do, because maybe you're worried. So maybe you RSVP no to that party because you already anticipate there's no way that she can go to that party. There's no way. Or maybe your child's having problems at school and they're nervous to go to school, but they really want to go to camp. And you're like, no way, you can't go to camp. You can't even go to school. How are you going to go to camp? It might be different for your child. Sometimes we have to allow our children to experience failure. And a lot of times they will surprise us and they won't fail. But if we don't allow them to have that experience, especially when they want to have that experience, we're holding them back. Because even when our kids fail, even when they lose it and they're so anxious, there's life lessons in those. Because every time a child goes through panic, every time a child has to work through their anxiety, they are building their anxiety muscle. They are developing new skills. It may not seem that way. You just might see like a child who's imploding and exploding all at the same time and is looking very messy. But if you are providing them with skills, or they're in therapy and they're learning how to reframe their thinking, or they're learning how to walk through it, they will take something away from that. And so failure is not a bad thing. Failure is part of the process. And a lot of times parentally, we know what our kids are probably going to fail at, and so we protect them. So we don't want to do that as much, right? We want to have at least a conversation with our children. And then we also want to be aware of what things do we not allow them or give them an opportunity to face. So a lot of times our kids will present us with opportunities on it depends on your child, but it could be like on a daily or hourly basis, that our kids are afraid to do this, they're afraid to do that, they're afraid to eat this, they're afraid to go there, they're afraid of, right? And how often do we give them an opportunity to take a challenge? So in my house and in my practice, we do challenges where when I see that my child is having an anxiety issue and they want me to rescue them, I don't automatically rescue them. I'll give you like a very concrete example. So if my child says, oh, I'm afraid to go brush my teeth. My kids have had periodically an issue with the mirrors because of Bloody Mary. Thank you for that. I thought that would have been gone by now in this generation, but it's still around. And so, that anxiety will come up with different themes at different times. And so you might have one issue and then it's nice and quiet for a while, and then a new thing might pop up. And that's not a failure on your part parentally, and it's not a failure on your child's part anxiety-wise. It's just that's how anxiety works. It can be cyclical. It can pop up different times developmentally. Something environmentally can trigger it. And so it's sharpening these tools so that you have them in your toolbox at all times, so you can just take them out and you can start attacking anxiety again. So my child comes out, I don't want to go brush my teeth, right? Well, when they're avoiding, I kind of, my red flags go up because my kids have anxiety issues. And so I typically know what the theme is, but if I didn't, I'd say, what's the worst part about going to brush your teeth? Well, it's dark in there. Well, turn the light on. But the closet's dark. Well, turn the light on. Well, the bathroom is open a crack in your bathroom and it's just black. Okay, well, turn that light on, right? Now, if that's not working, I might say, do you want to take a challenge? And then they'll say, maybe. What's the challenge? And so I have a point system, and the points equal dollars and the dollars equal prizes. And that's how we do it at my house, but it could be different at your house. And I'll say it can, for 2 points, if you can go there and beat your worry cloud, you can get 2 points. Now, the important part too is that I'm defining that they are beating their worry cloud. So I'm not just throwing them in there and just say, go do it. You can earn 2 points. I'm coaching them. I'm saying, your worry cloud wants you to avoid right now. Your worry cloud's wanting a big, big piece of pie. And we can, if you go there and I come with you, I'm feeding your worry cloud. I'm going to be giving it food. It's going to grow bigger. It's going to bother you more. Do we want that? No, right? But we can beat your worry cloud, and we can beat your worry cloud by you going by yourself, right? And telling your worry cloud, I know you're trying to make me anxious, but I'm still going to go in there. I'm going to do it by myself. And you can earn 2 points. Now, if the child's like, I'm not going to do it, I like to negotiate. And so I might say, if I see true panic and I'm not being manipulated, I might say, okay, well, how about this, right? Because we don't want to feed the worry cloud the entire pie. We can give it a slice of pie, but we're going to keep the rest. What if I stand by the door and you go do it? And then the child might say, okay, fine. And so what I'm doing is I'm still teaching my child, or a child, your child, to walk towards their fears. I'm still teaching them that it is really good on any level, at any, like with any little step, to go towards fears. It doesn't have to be a big step, right? So me, even in the door frame versus inside the bathroom, is progress for some children. So I want you to start thinking that way. And when we think that way, we'll see that there's a zillion opportunities for our kids to face their challenges and face their anxiety every single day. So I hope that helps a little bit. I hope that gives you some ideas on how to maybe structure your household and help your child build those skills, foster independence, and empower them to crush their anxiety. Until next time, I'll talk to you later. Take care.